Du lytter til Kulturkultisterne. Velkommen til Kulturkultisterne. I dette afsnit af podcasten vender vi tilbage til sidste måneds emne, nemlig den amerikanske og fundamentalistisk kristne Jack Chicks propagandategneserie, der advarer imod de farer, der kan ende med at få dig selv direkte i helvede. Han har lavet tegneserier om alkoholisme, katolicisme, homoseksualitet og alle de 7 dødssynder, som vi kender dem. Hårdmod, kærlighed, utugt, misundelse, frosseri, vrede og ikke mindst Dungeons and Dragons. Og ja, som nu sker regnet ud, så er den sidstnævnte, vi kommer til at fokusere på i dag. Jack Chick udgav under det Satanic Panic tilbage i 80'ernes Amerika tegneserien Dark Dungeons, der handler om 2 veninder, Marcie og Debbie, der er blevet helt opslugt af Dungeons and Dragons, til en sådan grad, at Debbie er begyndt at kunne udøve trolddom i virkeligheden. Men da Marcies karakter, Blackleaf, dør i en session af rollespil, mister hun lysten til at leve og ender med at tage sit eget liv. Efter tabet af sin gode veninde indser Debbie farerne ved det sataniske spil og forkaster det for i stedet at omfavne den gode kristne tro. Tegneserien er ligesom Jack Chicks andre værker uhyre simpel og kompakt i sin form og indhold. Der introduceres en hovedperson, som fristes eller allerede er blevet lokket i fordav af noget, som er syndigt ifølge Jack Chicks meget snævre og fundamentalistiske verdensbillede. Hovedpersonen oplever et brud med dennes tro eller fristelsen, og en afsløring forklarer, hvordan verden virkelig hænger sammen. Dark Dungeons har i virkeligheden ikke vildt meget med Dungeons and Dragons at gøre, men bygger i stedet alene på den opfattelse af bordrollespil, som den fundamentalistiske kristendom Jack Chick tilhørte havde. Det er før blevet observeret, at Dark Dungeons med den brede rækkevidde, som Jack Chicks tegneserie har haft gennem årene, nok er det mest delte et stykke anti-rollespilstekst, der nogensinde er blevet produceret. Og den har uden tvivl været med til at forme rigtig mange menneskers syn på genren som helhed, og især Dungeons and Dragons. Det er især i USA, men også i andre dele af verden. Derfor kan man også være i sin gode ret til at spørge, hvorfor der i 2014 blev produceret en filmatisering af Dark Dungeons af et filmselskab, der i princippet er rimelig uenig i Jack Chicks verdensbillede. Filmselskabet Zombie Orpheus har tidligere udgivet en række små indie-filmsprojekter, der hylder eller lader sig inspirere af rollespilsfænomener af fantasy-genren og de tilhørende miljøer omkring de 2. Projekter såsom The Gamers franchiset og Journey Quest tv-serien. Dark Dungeons derimod, altså deres filmatisering, er først og fremmest en tro adaptation af tegneserien, den bygger på. Der er aldrig tale om nogen konkret parodi. Debbie og Marcie bliver stadig introduceret til bordrollespil, og da Marcies karakter dør, ender hun også med at begå selvmord, hvilket leder Debbie til at blive optaget den kristne tro i et forsøg på at blive frelst. Men hvad er formålet med den her adaptation så? Kan man tale om en slags katarsis, eller en kompliceret forhold til den oprindelige tegneserie fra de her skabere, der i virkeligheden elsker Dungeons and Dragons? Og hvor finder man den ironiske distance, når der ikke er tale om en konkret parodi? Tja, der er vel ikke nogen bedre at stille her spørgsmål til end folkene bag filmen. Så lad os se, hvad de her siger om projektet.
And now I welcome director Gabriel Gonda and screenplay writer JR Ralls. The reason I asked you today to join me for a little chat is because back in 2014, you two made an adaptation of Jack Chick's infamous chick tract called Dark Dungeons, yes, which is about, it warns about the dangers of playing Dungeons and Dragons and what that does to your soul. But before we get too much into this film, I would like to ask you a few questions about your background and your relationship to the subject matter, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. First of all, what is your relationship to religion? Will you start, JR?
Sure. I was raised in a Christian household, but it was not a fundamentalist Christian at all. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and there was no issue religiously with that. As I grew older, I started reading on my own. about religion, the history of it, and I started to question many of the central tenets of Christianity. I started to really look into, well, does this make much logical sense to me? Is this necessarily the truth to me? There was a book that was very instrumental in my development, spiritually, intellectually. It's called The Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. And it really made an impact on me and had me questioning my own religious beliefs in a way I'd never done that. I moved away from Christianity. I wouldn't really call myself a Christian. Eventually, I kind of stumbled into Unitarian Universalism, which is a very open faith that can accept many different interpretations. And that's kind of where I find myself these days.
Sure. And a follow-up question. What's your relationship to role-playing games?
Oh, I grew up with them. Some of my most vivid childhood memories are of playing Dungeons and Dragons. We had a babysitter who introduced me to it, and it was a hobby that sparked my imagination and that really gave me a social outlet in ways that wasn't easy for me at the time. And as I grew older, I didn't play them as often, but whenever I did, I got a lot of enjoyment from it. And now that I'm a dad myself, I've introduced role-playing games to my son, and seeing him and his friend's face just light up as we're slinging dice around the table is just an immense joy to me. It's a really nice feeling to spread the happiness from my childhood to him and his friends.
Sure, that's yeah. I can understand that, like sharing it in that way. Yeah. What about you, Gabriel? What's your relationship to religion?
Well, my parents were. My dad is Catholic. He's an immigrant from Argentina. And my mom, I think, is just completely agnostic. As a kid, neither of them ever spoke to me or my brother or sister about religion at all. Just was never a part of my life. So I'd say I'm atheist. When I was younger, I was more of an asshole atheist.
I went through that phase as well.
Yeah.
I think it's
mellowed
required.
out. And I don't really care about anyone else's religion until it starts impacting my life or the lives of people I care about through like people trying to legislate their faith into law. That I will still be an asshole about. But other than that, well, whatever. It's not, I don't even really think about it day to day. So I don't have a relationship.
What about role-playing games?
I did not grow up playing Dungeons and Dragons. My entry to role-playing games mostly came from video games that were very heavily influenced, like Knights of the Old Republic and World of Warcraft. I played those a lot. But then when I started working for Zoe, Dark Dungeons was my first project that I directed for the company. I sort of had to learn a lot more just to get the jokes, really. Wasn't really necessary. And in fact, I would say my ignorance actually helped when making Dark Dungeons, because that's the way Jack Chick would have made it. Like, he didn't know what he was talking about. Even in the comic itself, it makes no sense if you understand the actual rules of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's ridiculous. So I tried not to learn too much before directing Dark Dungeons, and even the actors didn't know what they were doing. There's the one scene where they're at the table playing, and we have the audio recorded. It's like a montage of them playing. We have the audio recorded, and like the stuff they're saying is just absurd. But since then, I've actually directed a couple projects that are more gaming, like The Gamers. They're very specifically, about tabletop role-playing games. And I've actually played, I think it was third edition with Matt Vancel and the actors, just so they could be familiar too, and the jokes would land and they could deliver their performances correctly. Most of them had never played before, but we had a couple who were, veterans of the franchise who, also helped consult with us on, how to represent the game accurately. So that's my long-winded answer.
Do any of you have any specific memories of the Jack Chick and the Chick tracks from growing up?
So not from growing up. I didn't encounter any Jack Chick tracks in the wild until probably college. When I entered college, the internet was in its infancy. It was just starting to take off, and a number of Jack Chick tracks got posted online to be made fun of. And once I saw a couple online, I actually encountered one or two in the wild. I saw them just placed on a bookshelf or whatever. And with my background in tabletop role-playing game, I started looking at the Dark Dungeons track, and I've met a group of friends and we made fun of it. We were like, this is hilarious. And while in college, I actually pitched the idea of, hey guys, wouldn't it be crazy if we turned this Dark Dungeons pamphlet into a movie? But this is the late 1990s. Digital cameras were reserved for the Phantom Menace. We didn't have access to anything. We didn't have the resources. So that idea just stayed in my mind. But as part of nerd culture, making fun of the Jack Chick Dark Dungeons things was just something that happened in tabletop role-playing games. It was like, I don't want to be Elfstar. I want to be Debbie. You could see that before the Dark Dungeons movie at various T-shirts, bootlegs at gaming conventions and whatnot. And so that idea always stuck with me, even though I didn't encounter Jack Chick in childhood, but I did encounter him around college.
Sure. So kind of an ironic relationship from the start.
Very much so. It was never something I ever looked at anything more than like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Sure. What about you, Gabriel?
I'd seen them around sometimes in the wild. I was like JR. I'd see them and just kind of laugh. It's like, oh, this is just silliness. And some of them are actually quite hateful, and you can laugh at that too, because what else are you going to do? But and kind of in the infancy of the internet too. It was like they were among the earliest memes. Here's a funny thing from a funny thing, and you can laugh at it. But they never really stuck in my memory until 2013, lifetimes later. I was towards the beginning of my film career. I had made a couple of short films, and I was in a local industry Facebook group, and I saw a post that said, it was a post from Ben Dobbins that said, hey, we are looking for people who might be interested in what did he say? A couple of experimental films. And I was like, oh, I've heard of this person, and I've heard of their company, and like they are making some of the best independent series in Seattle. It was Journey Quest that I'd heard of. My script supervisor on the short film that I just made previously was actually their editor. And so like I sort of knew of them, and I was like, okay, this could be a cool opportunity to like maybe at least shadow a director and learn from them, or just be a production assistant or something, and just be more involved, because I need to learn more. And so I sent my reel. I sent an email. I sent my reel, and didn't hear back. for like 2 weeks, and I thought, oh, well, it's just another thing that didn't pan out. It's fine. Happens all the time. Then I get an email back from Ben saying, thank you for your reel. We are interested in discussing you directing Dark Dungeons. And I was like, what? And then I was like, what the hell is Dark Dungeons? So I went and I looked it up. And I remembered, I was like, oh, I've seen this stuff before. This is really interesting. They're going to make a film of this. Like, how would you even make a film out of this? Like, so I went and I had a meeting with Ben, and I basically gave them my pitch. Like, the only way you can make a movie out of this is to do it absolutely faithfully and like make a completely true to the source material adaptation. And like, we can't throw any jokes. We can't make it like one of those like scary movie or epic movie, like those parodies that were thankfully on the way out at that point. Yeah. They were popular for a time, but we can't do that. And essentially Ben said, right answer, you've got the job. And then we went and did it.
Yeah. So a general philosophy was to play it straight.
Absolutely. Everyone
100%.
Was yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you
the
only way to do it. Like, and we all got that.
I said numerous times, you cannot parody Dark Dungeons. You know, if you just try to make fun of it, it's not going to be funny. It's not going to be entertaining, and no one's going to care about it. But if you take it 100% serious, if you say, what is the movie that Jack Chick would make of this film if Jack Chick had the resources that we had? What is his vision? If we just literally try to do the best job at putting his work on screen as we can, and we just take it 100% deadpan serious, that'll work. That'll fly. Yep. People will get it. And that was the only way to go. There was no other way to adapt it.
And keep in mind, JR and I had never spoken at this point.
No.
Like, everyone reached this conclusion independently. Like,
yeah, but I really get it, because the original comic is so extreme that it kind of seems it's silly enough in its own existence.
Yeah, there was no need to throw anything extra in. Everything that is in the Dark Dungeons movie can be justified in the Dark Dungeons comic book or on the Jack Chick website. I did so much research for this film. It was ridiculous, the amount of Jack Chick comic books I read. I don't think I read all of them, but I probably read 90% of them, and just trying to absorb that worldview and put it on screen serious was the only way to go.
Yeah.
And now you're one of the top Jack Chick scholars on the planet. But
it was crazy. For some reason, like 90% of the reviews of Dark Dungeons, the movie, state that we were legally required to take this subject matter seriously. I don't know if you've seen that, Gabe, but it's like this, somehow this idea got out there that Jack Chick in our contract, which we never really had, said that we had to faithfully adapt it. And that's actually not true. I was given the rights to make Dark Dungeons with no stipulations. It was just like, here's the rights, go ahead and make whatever movie you wanted. But the movie I wanted to make was a faithful adaptation.
Is it still to this day just that one letter is the only contact you've had with them? I
have one letter giving me the rights. I have a second letter following up that first letter, in which I confirmed that I do have the rights, and that's it. I have 2 letters from the Jack Chick company. They never contacted me after the movie. No one, as far as I know, there is no record of what Jack Chick thinks of Dark Dungeons, the movie. And that is literally my only regret about Dark Dungeons, the movie. I am incredibly proud of that film. I think it was amazing. I think it's pitch perfect. It's everything I could have wanted to be. But I just wish I could have found out, what did Jack Chick think of this? What did he think when he saw this? Did he see it? I don't even know if he ever saw it. But yeah. I will always wonder that to my dying day. What did he think of his adaptation?
But he was like, nobody really knows what he thought of anything outside of the comics, because he never gave interviews. He was famously reclusive. So I don't know.
I was going to ask, so you just sent him a letter. That was the only, like, you didn't do anything else to get in contact with him.
So the whole story, it's all on the Kickstarter for Dark Dungeons, the movie. I won the lottery for $1,000. Now, I was a middle-class manager at the time. $1,000 wasn't going to change my life one way or another unless I made it. And when I won that money, I was like, I need to do something special with this. I can't just, put it in the bank and be boring. I can't just, slightly pay down my house. That's not going to do anything. What is something different? What is something special that I can do with this literal windfall? And I went, and that's when that old idea kicked back in the back of my mind. It was, what if I made Dark Dungeons, the comic book, into a movie? And that's what inspired me to write Jack Chick. And I said, "Dear Mr. Chick, I have won $1,000 in the lottery. Could I use this money to turn Dark Dungeons, the comic book, into Dark Dungeons, the movie?" And the letter's online. It's on the Kickstarter. You can read it for yourself. I said nothing but the truth in that letter, but I phrased my words very carefully. And he just went, "Sure. Here's the rights to that film." The funny thing is, the other idea I had for that $1,000 back in 2012, 2012 was when I won the lottery. I'd heard about this weird thing called Bitcoin, and I was thinking, yeah, I'm dead serious, Gabe. The other idea I had was, what if I just spent this $1,000 on that weird thing called Bitcoin?
Yeah, but
that was my other idea.
It's a great movie though. So
yeah. Yeah.
You know what?
I hope it's a $300 million movie. But yeah. That's how much the Bitcoin would be worth if I had bought it with my lottery money. But oh well.
Yeah. I think it's a very funny movie.
Yeah.
Some people don't, though, on the internet. Some people take you very serious.
Gabe, you want to cover this? Because those are my favorite reviews.
Yes. When I'm feeling kind of down, I will log into Amazon. It's no longer on Amazon, unfortunately, but or Letterboxd or another review site, IMDb. And I read the 1-star reviews for Dark Dungeons, and it just brightens my day. They tend to fall into two categories. One, the first one you might think of is people who are saying, well, this is complete garbage. This is not what role-playing games are about. These people are total idiots, and they don't know what they're talking about. It's just another terrible religious film. And those are funny. But then there's the other ones that during the time when Dark Dungeons came out, we refer to the era as the Satanic Panic. There were a lot of people who were really hurt by that. JR mentioned that it wasn't an issue despite having a religious upbringing. It was never a problem for him personally, but for a lot of people it was. Mm-hmm. And they had a pretty bad experience with their family or their community or their church, like coming down hard on them, believing that it truly was a satanic to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I think there is a lot of residual pain and trauma that people are still holding on to. And that might be the one thing I regret about the film, is that it brings up a lot of bad memories for people. And on the other side of that, there are some people, okay, let me back up a little bit. They say, like, why are you bringing this up again? This was ages ago. Why dredge up all this stuff that's no longer happening? But on the other side, there are people who say, well, it is still happening. Thank you for making this hilarious movie, making fun of it, but this stuff is still happening, and we've gotten away from those like toxic elements, you know, being able to grow up and distance ourselves from that. We've found our own community, and thank you for making this very funny movie. So, I mean, those two kind of balance each other out.
Gabe, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but at Gen Con, when I was working the booth, I had a guy come up to me and just tell me how cathartic he found Dark Dungeons the movie was, because his parents burned his Dungeons and Dragons stuff before his eyes when he was a little kid, yelled at him, were just very, in his words, just not good or pleasant to him. And that was like one of his only escapes, his only friendship groups, and they kind of destroyed it. And that hurt him. It hurt him really badly. And he found watching Dark Dungeons a cathartic experience. He found it to be like lifting of some of that pain that he had from his youth. So I get the people who were really hurt in the Satanic Panic and maybe can't laugh at it, but I also think there's the audience who it can be helpful and can be like useful for them personally.
You just reminded me of another heartwarming story related to Dark Dungeons. We were at a screening in Seattle, and this couple comes up to me. The woman is very visibly pregnant, and they told me that they met because they were both extras during the church scene.
No.
Yes, they met on the set of Dark Dungeons. We sat them next to each other in the pews in Chris Odie's church. And I don't know if he officiated their wedding, but I mean, they came and they told me that, but it was quite a lovely moment.
So a human life exists because of Dark Dungeons, the movie.
That's right.
Then it's definitely worth your $1,000. Before we started recording, Gabriel, he told me that when promoting the film, you tried staying in character as much as possible. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, I didn't want to get sued, for one thing. I have the legal rights to make Dark Dungeons the movie. I've still got the letter. It's sitting in my safe deposit box. It'll sit there until I die. I went and talked to a lawyer, and he said, "You're in the clear on this, but be careful, man." So I didn't want to poke the bear. I didn't want to be too upfront about it. And also, I just thought it was funnier. I thought it was going to be a better marketing promotion if there was like a little bit of wonderment among the intended audience. I mean, to anyone who took 30 seconds of research to see what other films Zombie Orpheus had made before Dark Dungeons, it was blindingly clear what type of message we were actually trying to convey with Dark Dungeons, the movie. But I thought it would be better marketing if we didn't necessarily beat that drum, and maybe there was some internet drama over, well, what are they intending by this? And I think there actually was a fair amount of that in the lead up to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even in the Wired article, I think that writer got it and sort of hinted what was going on, but also included quotes from us that were pretty ambiguous. And then the premiere at Gen Con, the Q&A afterwards, it was just really funny to be completely coy about what we were doing, and like they'd ask questions, and I wish we had recorded that, because that was
I have a
being a lot
recording
of
for
fun.
one of them.
Really?
Yeah. I'll see if I can dig that up and send that to you if I've still got it.
That'd be great.
I'll never forget one moment in that question and answer period when. So there's been various different versions of Dark Dungeons, the comic, and I started talking about first edition's DD, second edition DD, third edition DD, and the Gen Con crowd was just cracking up. And I'll never forget referring to the tiny little Dark Dungeons. It's a tiny comic, I think
22 panels.
22 panels. I referred to it as a graphic novel in an interview, and the interviewer just cracked up, and I was like, graphic novel, that's the term, right? So I thought it was funny. I thought it was hilarious to do the interviews like that.
Yeah, also that crowd, I can imagine it because people know kind of, I expect you knew people were in on the joke. I imagine it would have been different if like you were on normal radio or something like that.
Yeah. That crowd got it. We had 2 sold out screenings. It was pretty gratifying. They got it. But like my parents, on the other hand, or non-gamer friends, like trying to explain the most successful movie I've ever been a part of to them, like the amount of context that's necessary to even understand what is happening on the screen is quite a lot. So
my dad didn't get that it was he didn't get it at all. I showed it to him and he was like, wow, I'm really proud of you for making that looks like a high quality movie. I would have guessed it would have cost 10 times what you spent on it, but I showed him the Gen Con reaction video and he was like, oh, I didn't quite realize that was how the movie was intended to be taken.
Yeah.
Yes.
My sister reported that she was at my dad's house and they came across it like in the wild on Amazon. And she was like, oh, hey, that's Gabe's movie, let's watch it. And they turned it off after 5 minutes.
Oh, well. Well.
What's your going back to Jack Chick? Have you heard anything like from his supporters about the movie? Have you have any like feedback at all, or like backlash?
I don't.
Zero. I've looked. I have done, especially when the movie came out. I was like updating the Jack Chick website, and I was in the first like year or two, he like sends out a newsletter. I was reading that newsletter to see if there was going to be any mention of our film. As far as I know, no Jack Chick aficionado, no one at Jack Chick Enterprises has ever commented on the slightest.
Oh.
Is there even a Jack Chick fandom? Like I can't imagine.
I mean, people buy his stuff and pass it out.
Sure. Is there a Jack Chick convention? Is there
there's a lot of stuff online?
Like, I don't.
You're right. That's a fair point, Gabe. But
I think people buy them and to hand them out, but they don't like talk to each other about. Like the only people who collect them, I believe, collect them ironically.
You're probably right.
So I joined a Facebook group. It's got like 500 people in it. And I don't know, they're just not very engaged people. No. They just post like pictures of themselves, on a corner in New York City, handing them out, and that's it. There's no comments or anything. So I don't know if there is a Jack Chick community to have a reaction.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tried looking about the internet, but we also kind of concluded that most of it wasn't online at all, but more like some towns.
I've gotten Jack Chick tracks in the wild. My my wife was super excited one Halloween when one of my kids got one, and she was like showing it to me. Look!
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're real big on handing them out to kids on Halloween. Yeah, like in the newsletters, they give you tips for like how to wrap them around the candy bars with a little rubber band and hand them out that way. And there are dedicated Halloween tracts explaining what a satanic evil holiday it is for kids to run around in costumes having fun.
Yeah, I think on the website they brag that he's the best-selling comic book author in the world, and we couldn't.
I believe it.
We couldn't,
I mean, if you go by numbers, I can see it, because it's just given out for free by people who want to give it out for free, and the vast majority of them end up, in a garbage can, honestly, but they don't care. They just keep giving them out.
Yeah, and they're not terribly expensive either. Like to purchase, I got a lot of 100, I think, of Dark Dungeons when it was still in print, and I don't know, they're like 50 cents each. So,
what did you get them to hand them out to promote the film?
To promote the movie. I had a stamp made with the URL for the movie, and I stamped the back. The spot where you're supposed to put your church. So I put the stamp, and I was giving them out at Gen Con, and I've slipped them various places here and there, just as guerrilla marketing.
At Gen Con, when we were selling them, I often, a selling point for me was and if you buy this DVD, I'll give you a copy of the original one. And that was my closer. When I knew the person was almost ready to buy, I just slip in, and here's the original Jack Chick track for you if you buy the movie.
You just reminded me. I left a stack of them on top of the garbage can next to the Zoe booth at Gen Con, and someone in the Gen Con, not related to our company at all, but someone in the Gen Con fans group on Facebook took a picture and posted can you believe they're handing these out here of all places? And
yes.
Yeah.
So when you did your research for the film, how many do you have? A lot of them physical?
No, I don't have the physical ones.
No.
They're all available for free on the website, and that's where I did all my research. I read literally hundreds of comics of his, and there were a number of articles on the website at the time, and I read those too. And one of those articles stated the Cthulhu. Look, Gabe is showing
Gabriel
us.
has how many do you have?
Let's see. Oh, it's just 15, but
that's a nice collection.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. I read a bunch of articles on the website as well as the comic strips. And one of those articles stated that the Cthulhu mythos is all too real. And that is what we used as our justification for including Cthulhu in the Dark Dungeons movie.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be, what would Jack Chick make? So that's our basis for including that.
That makes perfect sense, because I had thought about it when I watched the movie, that was kind of, it took me a bit out, but it makes perfect sense when you say it, because most of the other stuff we researched him as well. And most of the other stuff in the film, we could see clear inspiration from his other comics, but that one I hadn't thought.
Oh, yeah, we did such a good job. Gabe, do you want to tell the font story?
Oh, the font, yeah. Let me see. Do I have the copy here? It'd be really ironic if that's the only one I'm missing. And in fact, I do not have a physical copy of Dark Dungeons anymore. I gave them all away. Yeah. You can find it and insert it in the edit, but there is a I have a graphic design degree, and that was my profession before switching to film. So it was very important to me that Marcie's suicide note be exactly the way it appears in the comic, and it uses a font called Brush Script. This was part of my prerogative as director, is I can override any other department. I try not to do it too much, because the people who do that too much tend to be the bad kind of director, the abusive asshole type. And I don't like to work that way. But in this one instance, our design department had made the suicide note, but it wasn't correct. Like the leading, that's the spacing between the lines, wasn't right. It wasn't centered on the page exactly right. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do it myself. So I made sure that it is like down to the millimeter, exactly the way Marcie, the way it appears in the tract, which led to another sort of like dissonant note, in that it was a little bit funny in the middle of a suicide scene, because the only way to write a suicide note like that is to type it on a computer and then print it on a printer, because nobody's handwriting looks like that. So in the middle of, that's how you get part in the middle of Marcie committing suicide, where she's typing the note out on a printer, and it just goes as she's standing up on climbing up on the chair to hang herself.
In a way, this is probably the most comic book accurate film of all time.
I think it's up there. If you're talking
we got compared to Watchmen, Zack Snyder Watchmen.
But he changed the ending.
He changed the ending, yes, that's true. But in terms of the visuals, like he was using panels from the comic as storyboards. It was kind of his style at the time with that, and with 300. But some of the other comparisons we've gotten to other films have been just delightful. Singing in the Rain. Do you remember that one, JR?
No, I don't. How did we get compared to that?
Well, the plot of Singing in the Rain is that in order to expose, I forget her name, but in order to, they wanted to take down this horrible actress so in order to expose that she was a fraud, all they had to do, because they had been in the transition from silent movies to the talkies, they were dubbing her voice. So, and they wanted to get rid of her. So all they had to do was let her sing in her natural voice and realize that she was a fraud. And so the comparison was that all we had to do was let Jack Chick sing in his natural voice.
Wow, that's nice. I've never seen a crowd applaud and crack up at a font in any film the way I saw at the Dark Dungeons premiere, thanks to Gabriel's amazing
and it keeps getting called out. Like when people do podcasts about it, they mention that, and that's pretty funny.
Just, when Dark Dungeons the movie came out, I was I was hoping I could kind of transition to film. That didn't happen. I went back to my normal middle-class life, and that's fine. It's enjoyable. I've got a lot of good jobs, of good people I know, but Dark Dungeons will always hold a spot in my heart. It took basically a year of my life to make that film, with the help of an amazing group like Gabriel and the two Bens, and everyone else involved was just amazing. And they've gone on to make more amazing stuff. And I really haven't, but I've still got that DVD, and it's always going to be an amazing memory of an amazing opportunity I got. So I want to thank everyone who allowed me to live my literal lifelong dream. Gabriel, thank you again for that. It was amazing.
I had fun too.
Yeah. And there's a scene in the movie Ed Wood where he's watching Plan 9 from outer space at the very end of the film, and he says, "This is it. This is the one people are going to remember me for." And when Dark Dungeons, the movie, came out, I don't remember if I said it to you, Gabe, or someone else, but I said, I think this is my Plan 9. I think this is what people will remember JR Ralls for. And, it's 8 years old now, and I think that's the case. It's still getting brought up in podcast. I still see it just pop up in the wild at places, and I'm like, that's cool. I've met only a couple of people in real life who have brought it up randomly, but that's been a thrill. That was just like a joy. So I'm incredibly blessed to have made this film, and thanks to all my supporters, and thanks to everyone who made it possible.
In the intervening 8 years, I've gotten married and had a child, and my kid's preschool teacher one day said, did you direct Dark Dungeons?
Nice.
I love that movie. Oh my gosh. It's odd to be famous within a very narrow slice,
super narrow. But it's great. My son is 10 years old, and as I said, I'm role playing with him. I haven't shown Dark Dungeons to him and his friends yet. I'm gonna wait. Gotta prime them first. Exactly.
Get them really into it so they'll fully get it. Yeah,
exactly.
Start out by giving them the comic at Halloween and just wait.
Yeah. Have you shown
Eleanor? No, I haven't. She wouldn't care.
Yeah,
she would turn it off after 5 minutes too. You know what you should do though, JR, is let your friends say, "Hey, did your dad make this movie?"
There you go. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. To what you were saying earlier, JR, I have gone on and made films that are objectively higher quality than Dark Dungeons, but it's highly unlikely that anything I ever make will surpass Dark Dungeons in terms of reach and popularity. So yeah, it's the one they're going to remember me for too.
Nice.
And thank you to the both of you for coming on the podcast. It was very nice to have you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's always fun when someone reaches out. I got your email. I was like, yes, another one. It's fun.
Okay. Can I make a quick plug for my podcast?
Yeah, sure.
And if you want to listen to me talk more, I'm on a regular podcast, 30-20-10. We talk about movies, television, and video games that came out this week, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and 10 years ago. It's a very fun community. So if you like pop culture, I do encourage you give 30-20-10 a listen.
I love your radio voice, JR.
Der har vi det så. Historien om, hvordan en spøjs idé, en fundamentalistisk kristen tegneserie, en ironisk distance og en sejr i lotteriet ledte til en lille niche kultfilm. Jeg håber, du nåede denne måneds afsnit af Kulturkultisterne, og hvis du er yderligere interesseret, så lægger vi også interviewet med Gabriel og JR op på YouTube i videoformat. Mit navn er som altid Valdemar, og jeg håber, du begynder at følge podcasten på din foretrukne podcastplatform, samt ikke mindst vores Instagram og Facebook-sider. Hvis du har spørgsmål, kommentarer eller forslag til podcasten, så er du også velkommen til at skrive på kulturkultisterne@gmail.com. Tak for denne gang, og godt nytår derude.